Jamie McMurray, very good here in practice yesterday. He backed up that practice with a great run to the pole, and he will select the outside lane as we get set to go green. Jimmie Johnson alongside for the 19th time in 2010. The Sprint Cup Series getting ready to roll, and now we are green in the Midwest at Chicago.
Hung pretty tough. I really thought the one car would pull in the lead coming off the turn two, but Jimmie Johnson's got a lot of grip down there, and he's making it work.
Jimmie Johnson using that inside lane to his advantage. He leads lap one. Gordon and Kane side by side. Excuse me, McMurray side by side for third.
You know, the funny part is all during practice we saw guys go to the top. Obviously, fresh tires right now on the bottom. Everybody kind of lined up on Jamie. Jamie's pulling back in third here. Strong move up off two.
David Rudeman able to drive underneath Sam Hornish Jr. That for sixth. Paul Menard looking as well. Talked about the success for Tony Stewart here at Chicagoland. It's his time of the year. Started third tonight. He looks good in the early going.
And the Going Green show, you heard Jamie McMurray talk about, okay, Tony Stewart, well, I watched the footage of him, and he stayed right on that white line the whole time. When we did the qualifying show on speed, or the practice show, Tony Stewart was right on that white line, and there he was. You saw him from the in-car camera rolling through the center of the corner to get under Jamie McMurray up off four on the white line.
And I think that's the key here. I mean, if you can keep your car on the bottom, 75% of the cars are going to be working the middle to the top of the racetrack as they get more and more laps on their tires. If your car can work down on the bottom, you're going to pass a lot of cars tonight.
And it's something that could change as the night goes on, Kyle.
Yeah, and we heard Jamie McMurray talk about, I need to get on that white line. We worked really hard on getting on the white line. We've run 4 laps. Jamie McMurray's not seen the white line yet, okay? He's been hung on that outside, but even when he had a clear racetrack, he didn't go the white line.
And since you've been on that show for 6 weeks, it's countdown to green in case you forgot to remember.
It's a pre-race.
Green show.
Yeah, it's a pre-race. It's a pre-race.
The good news is we're green now. You don't have to worry about it anymore.
Let's don't go through this again. I don't know who's in the back of the pack either, okay? I'm sorry.
Matt on more with Jamie McMurray.
And in that green show, that countdown to something show, Jamie McMurray talked about he would be running on the bottom. And guys, you're right. He has moved up, and he joked afterward. He goes, you know what? I probably jinxed myself. I'll probably be up top most of the night. He said the car is just way too tight now, much tighter than he expected. That's why he's moved a lane up.
And you know, we heard and when they interviewed Kevin Harvick, he talked about running that race last night and being able to make some adjustments for the day to try to figure out where his car was, because he liked where his car ended last night. He thought the racetrack changed, so he was going to adjust accordingly. As we see the 14 drive under the 16 car of Greg Biffle on the bottom of the racetrack. And you know, eventually Tony will move around, but right now this is where Tony left off.
Well, you'll hear guys, and talking to Jimmie Johnson yesterday about it, he liked his car because he said, you know the feeling when you get, he said, the car's getting into the track. There's a big difference when you have a car that goes around racetrack, especially a mile and a half. It almost feels like your tires are digging into the asphalt. He felt his car was that way. Stewart thinks his car is that way, and that gives you the opportunity. You can run the bottom if your car is gripping really, really good. If it's not, you can't stay on the bottom, because normally the car wants to get tight, especially getting up off the corner.
Tony's car really rolls through the center of the corner good. And this is, you know, again, we heard Kevin Harvick in the beginning say, this is a very round place to run. Even though it looks like it's got a straightaway, it's a round racetrack. You're constantly turning, you're constantly moving. If your car can roll into the corner, float into the corner, and roll free through the center, you can get to the gas earlier and make the straightaways a lot longer, maybe 5 or 6 car lengths longer, which in turn adds to that straightaway speed, obviously.
Tony Stewart looks good here early. Started third, running second. Everyone chasing Jimmie Johnson. He's led the first 8 laps at Chicagoland.
NASCAR Sprint Cup Racing from Chicago on TNT. is brought to you by Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15%. Call Geico at 1-800-947-AUTO or visit us at geico.com. By Frost Brewed Coors Light, the world's most refreshing beer. By the all-new 2011 Super Duty, built Ford tough. By McDonald's, I'm loving it. And by AT&T, rethink possible.
NASCAR.com Track Pass, Race View, Pit Command, and Scanner. The most access to your favorite drivers, live, free for Chicago. Get live in-car audio, multiple camera angles, and the most race stats anywhere online. It's commercial free all race long. Presented by the all-new 2011 Super Duty. Only on NASCAR.com. Go to NASCAR.com/free Chicago. Things have not changed since we went to break. Jimmie Johnson continues to be the race leader. Tony Stewart right behind him, 0.6 of a second the difference right now. And Greg Biffle in third, Phil.
Yeah, Adam, he just reported into his crew chief, Greg Orrin, just a couple minutes ago that the car is a little bit tight through the center of the corner. As a matter of fact, has a little bit of front tire chatter through the center, and then he's a little bit free up off the corner. That's what Greg Biffle's fighting right now.
Yeah, and Biffle thought he had a pretty good car. He was pretty happy after the practice sessions with this thing. And it's a pretty strong run for the Ford guys. They haven't really done a whole lot this year, but you've got one sitting in third right now and 7th, 8th, and 9th with Menard, Edwards, and Casey Kane.
Kane started 12th and has worked his way to 8th. So far, so good, Larry.
Yeah, one thing that's been going on in the Ford camp throughout the entire 2010 season is this FR9 engine package. Makes a little more horsepower, has a much lower center of gravity, actually cools a lot better, which lets them run a lot more tape. But what I was told this week is for the rest of 2010, with the exception of Bristol and Watkins Glen, all of the major Ford teams from Richard Petty Motorsports, Roush Fenway, and the Wood Brothers 21 will be running the Ford FR9 engine full time.
Hey, and why? I can understand Watkins Glen, but why Bristol, Larry?
Well, I think they just wanted to handpick some, Wally, with that many teams. That's one thing that put them behind, was all of a sudden Richard Petty Motorsports was added, that added 4 teams. I just think it gives them a little bit of a breather. And you and I both know you don't give up horsepower anywhere, but if there's a place you could give it up, Bristol would be the place.
Yeah.
Talk about Fords and how well they are running. Here's a couple of those that Wally mentioned inside the top 10. Paul Menard is 7th. Right behind him, Carl Edwards, and Casey Kane joining this mix. He's behind the wheel of a Ford as well.
Yeah, Carl looks like his car is a little bit loose. Through 3 and 4 that time, it looked like he was a little bit loose. I don't know what he's telling the team, but watch him as he goes down into turn 1. And normally, when a guy's tugging on the wheel to the right, not handling all that great. When you see a guy go through the corner and his right hand is pretty steady, you know he's got a really good handling car. So he's struggling a little bit, but he's still pretty fast.
And it's interesting. He run the bottom of the racetrack through 1 and 2, and the top of the racetrack. But I think he's just running wherever the 98 is not, because the 98 was up, he was down. That corner, the 98 was down, he was up.
But it may be that patch over there in 3 and 4. It's almost a bump, could be giving him some trouble. So he may be running high in 3 and 4 just to stay out of that patch.
We mentioned Casey Kane right behind these guys. He started 12th, and Ralph right now running in the 9th position.
Yeah, and he's searching, Adam, and not just for traction on the racetrack. He's searching for words to try to describe what he's feeling. He says the rear end of the car is a little bit free and moving around on him a little bit as he comes off the corners. It's the front end that he's having a harder time to describing. He says it's not exactly chattering, but it's bouncing around up front. And he just can't come to grips with exactly what it's doing to describe it to his crew.
Yeah, and you know, Ralphie, that makes it even worse when you're in traffic. It's hard to race around somebody when the front end's doing something like that, because it just magnifies the problem.
Yeah, and he didn't even try to race the 56. The 56 running down from a half a straightaway or 8 or 10 car lengths behind, he just pulled over and let him go down the front stretch.
Those drivers battling for 10th. Jimmie Johnson enjoying a Saturday evening drive in Chicago. He's leading.
You're watching NASCAR on TNT.